series on NPR, the headline on the first story said, "The sexual assault epidemic that no one talks about." And that wasn't entirely correct, because there were some people that talked about it. I knew that people with intellectual disabilities talked about it. I knew that because they were the ones that told me about this issue and that I should be writing about it. People like Debra Robinson and Carolyn Morgan, who were instrumental in my stories, and you'll hear them in one of the stories that I'll play, and who have been important leaders in the self-advocacy movement of people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, important leaders around the country. So they were the ones that told me that this was something that I should write. I've been a journalist covering disability issues for more than 30 years now, and almost anyone I ever met with an intellectual disability had a story for me about a sexual assault. If I got to know them, they would open up and tell me. And they said that people don't believe us. They don't take us seriously when we talk about this. It's a problem that others don't talk about, even though they should. Now, I've also covered stories about sexual assault on college campuses. In 2010, I got to work with Kristen Lombardi of the Center for Public Integrity, and we did that series together about the failures of school administrators to adequately investigate and punish people who committed sexual assault on college campuses. And our stories get credit for helping to push the Obama administration to issue its Dear Colleague letter and to take its set up its later action and the congressional passage of the Campus Save Act. So because I'd done the stories about sexual assault on college campuses and because I'd done stories about disability, I wanted to combine those. And we did this series last year called Abused and Betrayed. And both Carolyn and Debra were important figures in that. So let's start. I want you to introduce yourselves. Debbie, tell people a little bit about you and what people should know about you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me. Also, I have business cards, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me at the reservation, where you registered at the on the table. So I left them for anybody that would like to talk to me later or whatever. But I left all my business cards out there when you register. But I'm a person with a disability with CP, cerebral palsy. Also the first self-advocate with a disability that's executive director of an organization called Speaking for Ourselves. Speaking for Ourselves has been around since 1982. So we've been advocating for this and people's rights with disabilities, curb cuts that you see, to people living on their own, to people getting out of institutions, to people making choices and hiring their own staff. And then, so that's the long and short about
and Debbie,
who we are.
And you live here in Philadelphia, right?
Yes, I do. I am from New York, though. I'm a New Yorker. I'm from New York, but I was born here in Philly.
And Carolyn, you're also from Philadelphia.
Yes, I am. I was born in Philadelphia.
So introduce yourself. Tell people about you.
Well, I'm Carolyn Morgan. I was born in Philadelphia, and I got married. I had a son. And people ask me, how do you have a son? And when the doctor asked me that, I told the doctor, I asked the doctor, was he married? And he said, yes. I said, well, how do your wife have a son or daughter? And he said that was kind of strange, but that's how I had Calvin. So, I mean, they don't think that people with disability can have sex, but we can, and we did.
And Carolyn, you too, just like Debbie, you also have been an important self-advocate. And what does that mean? So we heard a little bit about the self-advocacy that Debbie's doing. How about some of the work you do?
Well, I met Governor Holder in Washington. I was the first person with a disability that received that award.
So you're talking about the Attorney General, former
Yeah.
Attorney General Eric Holder, when he was the
Yes.
Attorney General, he gave you an award
Yes, he did.
for your important advocacy on behalf of survivors of sexual
Yes,
assault.
yes.
And then, so what was some of that work that you've been doing?
I was telling people about my story because I had got raped, and I didn't tell my mother right away because I knew if I told my mother, the person would be here today, and I didn't want her to go to jail. So I waited until a long time to tell her, but I did tell her.
And we'll talk about that, how it's hard to talk to families. But so you've talked a little bit about yourselves. What do you think people see, or what do they think when they see you?
Well, sometimes they look at the chair until I open my mouth, and then they know that I can speak for myself.
They know you can speak for yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
But they see.
They see the chair, and they don't think they have no brains. I mean, even when I go shopping, people talk to my staff, want to talk to me, and I say, I can hear you. You can ask me to move over, and I will.
Wait, so if you go out to a restaurant and you're there, the waiter will
ask the staff
what you want to eat.
What I want to eat. I said, I'm paying the bill. You should ask
me. Debbie, what do you think people think when they see you? Do they see you as the national self-advocate that you are?
Well, I taught people to see me for who I am, not just a wheelchair. You know, it's like, you know, we're people, not jars. You know, then that, speaking for itself, done a lot of education to educate folks, everyone, about people with disabilities, to know who we are, and that we don't look at this, because I was on crutches and I wasn't in this, but as I got older, I just turned 59, so I ended back in a wheelchair, but I was on my crutches and walking more on my crutches, but that came with a lot of education. Coming out and speaking and educating the public, and you know, and teach. And we was teaching each other that we have our voice. Not the chair doesn't speak for us. We speak for ourselves.
I got a chance to hear you speak some more today. What I thought I was going to do, was thinking of doing, is I'm going to play one of the stories that I did for NPR. We did this series that ran in January 2018 called Abused and Betrayed. And the last piece, I did it entirely in the voices of people with disabilities telling their own stories of, and talking about sexual assault and talking about their own lives. So I'm going to play little parts of that, we'll stop, and then we'll ask some questions. So Darius, can we play the first part? So Debbie, I really like this part of the story because it shows that how you got on this path to healing, but also how sort of deeply and wisely you sort of thought about all this. So can you tell us a little bit more about, it took a long time before you were able to really talk about it openly, to seek out a therapist. What made you get to that point?
Well, it happened, it's the way it happened, the way we were at a Speaking for Ourselves retreat. I don't remember what we were talking about. It just happened at this retreat, and something just came over me and I just went out of the room. And a lot of us speaking for ourselves, the leaders, Mark Freeman, Nancy Noel, other folks came out following after me. And all I could, I just broke right outside. Nobody knew what was what. And so the leadership of speaking for ourselves, and I was just getting started. I think I was speaking for myself maybe two years or so, and so between Mark and Nancy coming out, they're the ones that knew someone, and they're the ones that was transporting and was telling me about a therapist.
And you said, by the way, that when these assaults happened, you didn't really know what to name them. You didn't get sex education when you were younger.
No, special ed in the 60s and 70s. I was born in the 60s, 70s, and special ed in New York. We stayed in one classroom and learned the basics, and we didn't get any kind of sex education.
And what about today? Do you think people with intellectual disabilities, do they get a chance to learn about healthy sexuality?
Yes, with all the trainings that's going on, yes, today is, which is good, is more out there now. So a lot of, they are getting more than we did,
right,
than Carolyn and I did back in the day.
Right. Let's play the second part. So we heard Thomas Mangrum just then talk about how hard it is to go to police or others because they're just not believed. And people think that somebody with an intellectual disability can't be trusted. Carolyn, you had this experience, right?
Yes, I have.
Talk about that. What happened when you went to the police?
When I went to the police, they asked me, did I ask for it? I said, no, I didn't ask for it. Did I know the person? I said, no, I didn't know the person. And they just needed me trained more about people with disabilities because they didn't know nothing. And see, a person like me had to teach. I'm a teacher, and I had to teach them because they didn't know. And I told them, I can talk, but imagine somebody that can't talk, and they can't get their point across. And they all looked at me and they thought, she's right. Well, I can talk, other people can't. So, I had a voice for them too. And they had other voice, nobody else to speak for them.
And Carolyn, you told me, you said you have to tell your story. Everyone has a story, people have to speak up.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
That means you have to speak up until somebody listens to you. Because if you don't speak up, there will be no changes. And it's time for a change.
But both you and Debbie talked about how it was hard to sort of speak up. You were worried about telling members.
It is because my mother would have killed the guy.
Right.
And she would have been in jail. And I felt guilty because I told my mom.
And Debbie, you had that experience. You couldn't go to your family.
Right, I didn't until, yes, I was, because that was part of my therapy. I had to go through therapy and heal myself, and before I had courage to tell my mother, because, my brothers didn't find out until actually when they saw the video on Channel 12, and I got the phone call, and I knew my brothers were so angry with me, upset with me, and mad because I didn't tell. Because they would have, like Carolyn said, all my family would have been in jail. I can tell you that right now. She's right. When you tell your family or the first reaction is anger, and they want to kill somebody or hurt somebody, or they don't, it's hard to, I didn't even get finished, and then they just jumped the gun. Because they didn't understand, because they were angry, and my mother just blames herself. If she wasn't around, she lived out here. I was staying with my dad, watching my baby sister. So, but when it, that's the other part of therapy. I had to get to the point in therapy. Therapy helped me to have the courage to tell my family. And I just didn't tell my brothers. They found out when the series was on TV.
You did a video, that was...
Yes, and they were very upset. I had got the phone calls, and I got mixed. Some of my family was proud of me and encouraged. My brothers were the opposite.
So it's hard for anyone to tell family about this, but particularly in your families where the family felt they had to somehow protect you.
Yeah, protection, anger, why you didn't tell, it blew that, they just couldn't handle it.
So when I was doing the reporting about this, I met and heard about sometimes, often for a person with a disability, you struggle to be independent and to prove you can be independent, to find a job, to go to school, to live on your own. And so I talked to one woman who was afraid to tell a parent because she was afraid that if it came out that she'd been raped, that her parents would say, oh, you can't live on your own anymore, you're not capable of being independent. Is this a worry that...
Yes, actually, Joe, it is, because one of my closest friends in New York that I grew up with, she just moved out on her own not too long ago. And about a couple of months, and this was when I lived in New York, my friend lived on her own, had her own place. Somebody broke in, beat her up pretty badly, hurt her really badly. They ended up taking her home, and she didn't live that long and she passed away. It was devastating. My father just totally lost it. And he said, if I've ever heard it, and to see your parents' face and knowing what was going on, it scared me. So I didn't tell my father anything.
So you didn't tell him?
No.
Let's play this next part of the story. And yes, sometimes the sexual assault of people with intellectual disabilities does get discounted. In 2014, a judge in Georgia threw out a conviction. He said the woman with Down syndrome didn't behave like a victim. She'd waited a day to report the assault. And in 2012, a psychologist testifying in Los Angeles said a 9-year-old girl who'd been assaulted by a boy at school was likely protected against the emotional trauma because of her low IQ. The jury was so offended, it awarded the girl $1.4 million in damages, far more than the family was even sure. People with intellectual disabilities suffer less gets Carolyn Morgan of Philadelphia angry. She says, we feel the same pain as everyone else.
We do feel pain all the time. Don't tell me that it'll go away.
She knows she's dealt with the pain of her own rape. And she says anyone who denies her pain is ignorant.
They can't see that. They don't want to see it. They close their eyes to it.
So, Carolyn, we talked about that, and you were so insulted, and you expressed that anger so powerfully in that clip we just heard. In your life, did you find people minimize the pain that you felt after you were assaulted?
Yeah, because they don't believe. They don't believe you when you first tell them. So you have to keep telling them until they do. And I have a family that I don't want to tell nobody because I knew what was going to happen. They were going to try to find the person and kill them. And and I didn't want them to go to jail.
So why is it so? What happens? Why, if a person with a disability tells the story, they are discounted?
Because some people don't believe it when you tell them. Like I reminded my brother, he said it didn't happen, but see, I know what happened. So no matter what he said, I know what happened to me.
Did people just not believe you?
Well, they don't believe me because they say, well, you didn't tell them. I didn't tell my brother, I didn't tell my sisters, I didn't tell nobody because I knew that they didn't believe me. So now he said, I believe you, but before they didn't believe me.
So tell me a little bit more what that's like, not to be believed by your own family.
Well, people don't believe people, when it's not your family, they don't believe you. Because I have a disability, and they think I don't understand, but I do understand. You have to realize people with a disability, they understand. A baby understands. When a baby cries, you know, either he want to be held or they want to be fed and dry. So even the baby can tell you what they want by the 3 signs.
And Debbie, this is some of the advocacy you do to try to make sure people hear people with disabilities and with intellectual disabilities.
Right, that's why the developmental programs have used our videotapes for training the staff that service people with disabilities. Our videotapes of our stories is now part of the training for our staff at developmental programs.
So Debbie and Carolyn, let me ask you, when you tell these stories, do lots of people have their own stories of assault? Do people tell you their own?
Yes, they tell me their own because they trust me. I don't go into they feel comfortable talking to me. You got to feel comfortable to tell people your story. If you don't feel comfortable, you won't say nothing.
So, and what Sam found out is that this is we call this, in our NPR stories, we call this an epidemic. This is really widespread. This is, we found these Justice Department numbers that people with intellectual disabilities deal with sexual assault numbers 7 times that of other people. And by the way, the Justice Department numbers don't even count people who live in group homes and institutions where, like in Sam Maxwell's experience, he was raped in a state institution. Other research shows that the rates of assault are very high in those places, right?
Right.
Yes, it is. It's very high.
So let's also talk about what people with intellectual disabilities want. They want love, romance, relationships, right? Like anyone else?
Yes.
Exactly.
And Sam was saying that it's very hard for people with intellectual disabilities to have relationships. First of all, if you have the sexual assault in your past, but also let's talk about what makes it hard for people with intellectual disabilities to have relationships. Let's see. I guess people do people have much privacy where they live?
Not if you live in a group home. They don't.
And what's that like? What does that mean? Why don't you have privacy?
They don't have, because there's no locks on the doors and stuff like that. They can just walk in. People can just walk in your house.
So you can't lock a door?
No. And you can't really have sex because you don't know who's gonna walk in while you're doing it.
Right. So you don't have privacy.
No privacy, not at all.
A lot of people live with their parents, right?
Yes.
And that makes it hard to date.
Yes.
I assume, do either of you drive?
I dated in my,
What's that?
No, go ahead.
I dated in my mother's living room, and we had a stair step. You could look down in the living room and see what I was doing. So.
Okay, so that's hard to do in your mother's living room.
Yeah.
What about, I assume it's, if you don't drive, right? It's hard to go out on a date.
No.
You probably, we know that people with disabilities have a very high unemployment rate, so they
Yes,
probably don't have a lot of disposable income to go out on dates, right?
Yes.
So, but Debbie, do you want to tell us a little about how you met your Frank?
Yeah. Yes, I don't even remember the year now. This is when I used to live on my own. I used to have my own apartment down Center City, on 23rd Street, Riverside Presbyterian Towers. I met Frank when he was a security guard. He's normal, just like everyone in this room. And I don't like to use the word normal. I didn't see his disability. It means he can walk. He didn't have a chair. He didn't have a cane. He didn't have braces. So I didn't know until later, as we were dating. So we, actually he was doing the chasing. I was doing the running the opposite way. He was running behind me. He was a security guard where I used to live at. And then he was somehow interested in me, and he used to, he came up with this, he had the key to the kitchen. So he came up with this big, gigantic ice cream with everything on it. And I called my girlfriend, and this is when I haven't been dating for a while. And when a man brings you all that, and she said, you didn't know what that meant? No, I didn't. That means a man likes you. Well, how would I think? I know I told him I like ice cream. So he came with the kitchen sink. And so one thing led to another.
And I know he was an important person in your life, and he's recently passed away.
He recently passed away a couple of years ago, yes.
Let's play this last part of the piece.
James Metters was assaulted by a man from his church in Baton Rouge who befriended him. Metters was afraid what would happen if he reported it.
And I thought he was going to kill me.
But a co-worker noticed he seemed depressed, got Metters to say what happened, and got him to call the health information line.
And the information line told me to go to the same hospital. And the same hospital is the sexual assault nurse examiner. And I met a wonderful lady named Miss Wanda. And Miss Wanda really took the time to examine me. And the key of it was that she worked with my pace, not her pace. And the police came and did step by step.
In the hospital, Metters was thinking he didn't want anyone else with an intellectual disability to go through this.
And remember, early on, during the exam, I said, I want to change the world. But Miss Wanda and the detective and a friend of mine said, James, you need to take time to recover before you help others.
That was 2005. The man who assaulted him went to prison. And Metters started speaking out to groups around the country. He lives in San Antonio now, and 4 times a year, he helps train the new volunteers at the local Rape Crisis Center. He tells them that people with intellectual disabilities are the frequent targets of sexual assault, and he says it's time to stop keeping it a secret. Joseph Shapiro, NPR News.
I ended the whole series on that with James because I liked that it was positive, that here he was, he used his experience to and his own healing process to try to reach out to others and to train others, and he talks so wonderfully about how having this good sane nurse and the detective who listened to him and took the time to work with him and he says, go at my pace, how important that was for his healing. And then that he ends up giving back, right, to the community and then helping to train the Rape Crisis Center volunteers. And Debbie and Carolyn, I know you do a lot of training too. Different groups, police, prosecutors, rape crisis centers.
We went to we did a training. We had a training on it was amazing to me. Women Against Rape and things, they didn't know anything about our system, which was very interesting. I mean, they had no idea, so we had to go back and look at everything, and we got to do this another way, because we didn't realize that they didn't know anything about the disability system. And, you know, they came from a different side of the spectrum, the community side, didn't have no idea. So we redid the training and talked to them about who we were and about the disability system, and things like that. And, you know, and so they could understand about us, like Carol said, about us without us. But they needed to understand about our system. In order to help us, they needed to understand what we were.
And also part of it is learning how to talk to someone with an intellectual disability who may have difficulty.
Yes.
Sometimes abstract concepts are difficult. What
Right.
time it is, what day of the week. Beverly France with the Institute on Disabilities at Temple University, who's here somewhere, who runs the criminal justice and healthy sexuality program.
Yes.
The two are
Yes.
combined there, right?
Yes.
Told me about how when she does training, she talks to police and prosecutors, ask questions, specific questions. If you ask somebody what time it is, they may not be able to tell you that, but you can ask, were you watching television? What program were you watching? Were you getting ready for dinner? Were you getting ready for bed? So you can figure out sort of the time. But there's a different way that people have to understand, different ways of speaking in more concrete ways.
But Joe, when we went to the courthouse, I don't know if you was with me, Carolyn, but when we went to a courthouse, and we was invited to see this judge, and the place wasn't accessible. So if a person with a wheelchair, you see our wheelchairs, I use Carolyn's wheelchair, there was no way a wheelchair of her magnitude can get to the courthouse to bring the case forward. The place, the justice room by itself wasn't even accessible.
Right, so
And finding out that they're not accessible for folks to bring their case to the judge or anything, when you see that you got to climb up a whole bunch of steps, and there's only one crisis center in Philadelphia that's accessible, that's just not cool.
So that's an important.
You know, it's not accessible.
That's an important message. So we need to think about accessibility. If one of our biggest problems is that people don't feel comfortable reporting a rape, then think about that extra barrier. If the place you need to go, if it's not accessible, if you can't make a phone call, if you can't get to a place.
Well, what I did is go with the person, and I had an abuse issue situation that happened on my watch at my office, and I was all the way downstairs. I even bought this individual a cell phone for safety.
So
when Temple came to try to videotape us.
So I think the message that I'm hearing from you today is that you want to be treated. You want the same things as everyone else. You
Yes.
want to be treated with the same respect and as everyone else. I think we have maybe 1 minute to sort of conclude here. I'll give you each a chance to say things to this audience that you want them to know.
I want them to know that it can happen to anybody. Anybody. You don't even have to have a disability and it can happen. It's it's a sad state of the world today, because you got to tell.
And these are people who they'll respond to people when it happens. So, but what do you want to tell them about dealing with people with disabilities?
They need to know that people with disability have to tell somebody that believes them. like United is one. We work with them and we make sure that they are safe. They have to be safe in order to talk.
What does that mean for you to be safe?
To be safe, that means they can trust you. You won't tell nobody else that they can trust you. That's what it means to me.
Right. Like at our meetings that we have monthly, what stays there, stays there. I mean, one time we had to make it safe for folks. At our chapter meeting, with my first presidency, and speaking for herself, I had to deal with just that. There was an abuse going on in an institution, a private institution, wouldn't it? And for them to feel comfortable we had to make the room safe. And for me to invite the Deputy Secretary, Nancy Taylor, to our meeting was a very big deal. They didn't feel comfortable. There was abuse going on like crazy. But for that to happen, we made that room safe. Nancy came to the meeting, spoke to everybody. We had a newsletter, and we tried to encourage them to tell their stories, but we had to make it be a safe environment. We went down there and visited them constantly.
So safe was that they trusted you. I mean, people here know, I mean, everyone in this room knows the importance of believing what people say to them. But I guess I'm just trying to figure out to conclude this, what it is that makes specifically a person with a disability feel safer.
Well, like Carolyn and I are up here, they're only going to talk to folks like us, unfortunately, until they feel comfortable. Because we're like them, they see us and they look at us for comfort, but they have to feel comfortable. And to make people feel comfortable, you have to just first believe them, maybe take them out to their comfort zone. Don't be dressed like three-piece suits, dress normal, like they are. You gotta start small. You have to, it's a trust factor. It's a trust factor.
So it's taking you seriously,
treating
you as an adult, not like children. We're not treating you like you're incapable, and basically treating you like they would anyone else who comes to them who's survived a sexual assault.
Right, and try to believe them. But you have to take them into a safe place. Put them safe. If it's somewhere where they in their safe zone, you got to go where they are, not where you are, not where you think you should be. Wherever they are, and if they walk out into a garden and that's what they do, and wherever they are, that's where they feel safe. You got to get them in a really safe and trusting environment. You have to. And self-advocates can do that. People that trust them, that whoever they want around them, it might be their roommate, it might be somebody like us, a self-advocate. You got to reach out to us too. That's why we're here, that's why we're telling our story.
So
we are a resource for everybody in this room.
So people can come to you, can come to find other self-advocates and ask. And get advice.
Yes.
Okay, that's good advice.
Yes.
All right, I think our time is finished, and thank you so much for sharing these insights with us.